what we are going to see moving forward is a tailoring of medications, of supplementation, of exercise, of diet, like we've never seen before, because we have the ability to now use genetics in an everyday fashion that can help us do that.
Welcome to the NWI podcast, brought to you by the National Wellness Institute. I'm your host, Caroline Carlson, and this is the podcast for wellness professionals and enthusiasts who want to amplify the quality of their lives in all 6 dimensions of wellness. Don't worry about taking notes. I'll do that for you. And you can find them at nwipodcast.org. Wellness professionals, stay current with best practices, earn continuing education credits, and get wellness tools and resources by becoming a member of NWI today. NWI podcast listeners save $14 on NWI membership by using the code for this episode at checkout. Go to nationalwellness.org. Click on the link to become a member and use the code AGS19. That's AGS for Advanced Genomic Solutions, 19, to save on membership today. Today we are speaking with Lance Bennett, co-founder of Advanced Genomic Solutions. Lance is a West Point graduate and decorated U.S. Army intelligence officer, where he was stationed both in the United States and Southeast Asia. He has been in the genetics and biotech industry since leaving the military and joining his first medical device company, KLS Martin. Lance has spent 22 years in sales, management, and executive leadership positions in the biotech industry, most notably at Amgen, the world's largest biotech company. He led multiple product launches for oncology and nephrology medications and was awarded the company's top honor of Chairman's Circle for 4 years running as a sales executive and sales director. Since leaving Amgen, Lance started several successful medical companies, including co-founding Advanced Genomic Solutions in 2012. At AGS, Lance led sales and marketing teams for pharmacogenomic and toxicology diagnostic testing divisions beginning in 2012. He also successfully launched a multi-year Medicare-sponsored study, enrolling thousands of patients beginning in 2014. Lance is also now responsible for the implementation of new laboratory expansion operations globally and global distribution of new products and continuing education. Lance resides in Arizona. Lance, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's an honor. It's really exciting to get a chance to talk to you about Advanced Genomic Solutions. I've been doing reading on this company, and it's fascinating. You know, people are really familiar with Ancestry for your DNA testing to find out where we've come from and who our ancestors are and where they're from. But the kind of testing that your company does, it's really profound what kind of benefits you can get from them.
Yeah, we agree. I mean, the Ancestry information is fantastic. It has also really shed a lot of awareness on how mainstream genetic testing is now. But there's so much more that we can do with genetic testing, not only now, but moving into the future, that can help us make really smart lifestyle choices. So that's really where we have focused our attentions and will continue to as more and more genetic information becomes available to help people make smarter choices every day. And we love coming to work, and we love being able to help people figure out what that looks like for them and which test or tests may be best for them.
Yeah, I think that people can use the information in so many different ways. And as you said, get to know themselves a bit better and what works for them. Now, I find it very interesting, the route you took to get to your current career, going through West Point into genetics and the biotech industry.
Yeah, it really wasn't that straight of a line for sure. When I got out of the military, I chose to make a career in healthcare and went into the biotech industry. And the biotech industry is famous for its research.
Yes.
And as I grew through the ranks at my organization, I found how intriguing that research was and really how personalized we could make the care for individuals moving forward. Not every medication is meant for every person. One size does not fit all when it comes to optimal care. And so when we left that organization and chose to go in a different direction, genetics was incredibly intriguing to me. and my fellow co-founder. And it's really fun when you can find an answer for someone who has failed to find that answer in more traditional approaches. And what we are going to see moving forward is a tailoring of medications, of supplementation, of exercise, of diet, like we've never seen before, because we have the ability to now use genetics in an everyday fashion that can help us do that. So I am very happy with how that career path kind of took a few bends and turns, and it's been a lot of fun for me.
You have a background in military intelligence, so it sounds a little bit cloak and dagger as well, in that you're getting to find out all of this new technology and how you can use it for people to really dig into what their biology is telling them that works for them that they would otherwise have no way of finding out. It's very cutting edge.
Absolutely. And on the same breath, how important to keep that data private and secure. We look at the genetic data that an individual entrusts us with to find out the answers for what it is they're looking for. And we need to do our part in keeping that safe. And part of that is really having a robust security program, which we have in place, and how we treat the data and how we don't sell or share or transfer that data to anyone but the customer is a choice that we've made since we opened the doors. And it has been a very good move for us as a genetic testing company, and really finding some of the partnerships that we have, because they know that we won't do anything with that data beyond providing it to the individual who really wants it. And that's been a very big differentiator for us in the marketplace. And that differentiator grows all the time because no one wants this information compromised, whether it be their bank account information or their genetic information. It's theirs, and they want to make sure that it's secured.
That's very true. You don't sell the data as many other companies do. So it sounds like your mission is purely to serve the individuals that send their DNA to you for testing.
That's correct. We're working with the individuals. We also do a fair amount in the corporate wellness space. We believe that reaching employees through their employers is a great match, a great fit, whether they offer it through their voluntary benefits program or through a wellness program. But even in that case, the employer, not only because of our security and privacy standards, but also because of federal laws, will never see the individual's information, and that information couldn't be held against them either. So yes, it's a very unique stance for us. It is very different. Many companies that are out there that do genetics are large data informatics companies and partner with other larger groups and sell that data, transfer that data. And that's just not our business model. We are a genetic testing laboratory that, delivers incredible information to the individual so that they can make smarter choices with their lifestyle.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned partnerships. So in what ways do you partner? Is that through the corporate partnerships?
Yeah. So part of what we do is we work with organizations that are progressive, that are looking for new benefits to be able to provide to their employees. Obviously, smarter, happier, healthier employees are also the most productive employees. And being able to get them benefits to let them be better at their jobs, but also be able to use them to attract and retain top talent is another way to do that. So we work with these corporations, anywhere from small businesses to Fortune 100 companies, that are looking to offer a new innovative benefit to improve their employee health. So we work with them to find a way to incorporate this into their system and to be able to get the employee the benefit that they want, and be able to provide some education to keep raising engagement for these individuals, as well as continuing to help them comply to their overall standards as well.
Yes, and I can imagine how that would be an alluring thing for an employee to see in the benefits package, to be able to take advantage of this kind of information. So I can see how it would encourage engagement. How exactly does it encourage compliance?
Sure. So we measure compliance really as, does an individual stick to the program or the service? And really the foundation of compliance is judged by, does a person see or achieve the results quickly, and is that sustained? And so for us, when you're able to come in with a plan that is personalized to that individual, they're generally able to see those results faster and with less trial and error, which means they're more likely to be able to stay on the program. They generally feel better. They generally have more energy, look better, perform better, just generally more positive and positively impact that individual. When you can have a benefit that can affect an individual on a personal, on a unique level, it can be very impactful, as opposed to one that may be more universal that less people may get advantage from.
Yeah, and if they can see evidence that they're really moving the needle and that they're going in the right direction with their plan because it's backed up by the data that's from your testing, that's got to be very encouraging for them.
Yeah, absolutely. When it's specifically designed with them in mind, with their genes in mind, the compliance level does tend to go up.
Now, what can people use the genetic information from these tests for?
That's a great question. There's so many genetic tests that are available. For our testing, we have people that use it to help figure out what they should eat, how they should exercise, if they need to take certain nutritional supplements because they've got some predispositions to not being able to metabolize some. How do they handle stressful situations? Do they have some addictive behaviors? That's all in one test that we have. We have another test which helps them measure how effective a medication might be in their system, how well they metabolize a medication, and if they may be at greater risk for a side effect. We've got other tests for measuring an individual's skin health and what treatments and options may be best available to help them have youthful, better appearance and better acting skin. And the list can go on for how somebody can use a genetic test to help get them pointed in the right direction.
Now, from what you've said, it sounds almost as if people could take certain tests more than once to gauge if the information has changed, or is that more diagnostic?
Yes, so for us, these tests are once in a lifetime. These genes that we are looking at right now, they don't change. So this information, we've tested someone as young as 1, as old as 101. So we've got about 100-year spread. These genes aren't going to change. So this information is going to stay the same for that individual. So whether they took it at the age of 20, it'll be good for them, well on in their life to hopefully be able to help them. Now, they may use different sections of the test as their goals change. Maybe they use our health and wellness test, for example, for more to get better performance out of a particular sport that they're working in an earlier age. But then as times change and goals change, maybe they want to use it to maintain or lose, some healthy weight. We want to be able to then use that same test in a different manner to be able to help them accomplish their goals.
Yes, as you said, genetics don't change, but you can revisit this test over and over again. But that sounds like that's the great benefit too, and the incentive, especially if you're paying out of pocket for these tests, because while they're not cheap on the face of it, if you do this one time, each type of test, and then you can revisit it and utilize it again and again for different areas that you're working on, that's a tremendous value.
Absolutely. And when you look at it from a lifetime perspective,
right.
The cost of less than a plane ticket these days or a few months at the gym, having this very pointed information that you can utilize, and then as your goals change, be able to utilize in a newer fashion, can be incredibly beneficial. Yes, there is an upfront cost in many situations with this, whether it's an individual paying the whole thing or having an employer pay or subsidize some of it if it's being incorporated in the corporate setting. But making sure you are exercising in the right manner or ingesting the right foods and fats, and not using supplements or skin products that won't work for you or won't because of your genetics, that is definitely incorporates into the cost and makes things very, very feasible.
It does. Over time, I really believe it's going to change the face of the way that companies offer benefits to employees. Now, the areas of information are so beneficial in these different types of tests. I would think clients are having to play eeny, meeny, miny, mo to decide which test to get first when they've got a choice. Let's talk about the different kinds of tests you offer. Being with the National Wellness Institute, I've got to start with, tell us about the health and wellness genetic tests.
So our health and wellness test is the one that really helps an individual tailor their nutritional, exercise, supplementation, and stress response needs based on their unique DNA. Understanding how your genes impact these particular lifestyle areas lead to quicker, longer lasting results in most cases. So whether you've got a person that is looking to lose weight, maintain a healthy weight, improve their performance in their sport, or even generally improve upon their health, this is the right test to start with to help provide some personalized direction, which previously hasn't been available to that person. They can use it on their own, or they can help their either fitness professional or healthcare professional with this information to help devise the right plan for them, which is really important to be able to do. The more tailoring we can do based off of a person's unique genetic makeup, the more success we're going to have in the beginning and longer sustained results.
What exactly does matching personal goals to personal biology mean in the picture of taking this test?
That's a great question. For us, it really means that to meet your health goals, incorporating that genetic knowledge is really essential. We look at genetics as being about 30% of the overall health equation. The other 70% of that is a combination of the behaviors that an individual has and the environment that the individual is placed into or they put themselves in. So for us, the more that we can have that genetic information impact those behaviors and impact that environment, the more successful the individual is going to be. So using genetics can help reduce kind of the time, effort, and money spent on things that may not be effective for you. So learn what's best for you, not just for your spouse or your training partner, really what works best for you. Globally, millions of people now have already incorporated genetic testing into their everyday life. So as we move forward, really the future of health and wellness and performance, like you've talked about, is really in having these genes and matching, where do I want to go with what's inside me and how do I use those together?
So a part of what you're talking about really is nutrigenomics, right?
Yes.
And that's all the buzz right now. So can you speak a minute about what the definition of nutrigenomics is and elaborate on this field to tell us how close this is to truly becoming mainstream?
Well, I think it's absolutely mainstream now. Nutrigenomics really is the study of how genomics impacts nutrition, which is exactly what we're looking at now. Part of what we do is help identify genetically what percentages of proteins to carbohydrates to fats an individual should utilize. Not everybody's created the same. Some people metabolize carbohydrates vastly different than other people. So having the same diet, although it may be, some people may term it as healthy, may not be the most appropriate one for you. If you're an individual that needs a higher level of carbohydrates and you try to go on a zero carbohydrate diet, you may be successful in weight loss, in the short term, but from a lifestyle perspective, you eventually won't be able to maintain that. So understanding the impact of genes into nutrition is huge, not only from a protein and carbohydrate perspective, but choosing the right fat is also very, very important to do. Many people we see a lot of different fats. Monounsaturated fats, for example, seem to be the vogue fats right now. Those are the ones we see on television, the avocados, the almonds, the olive oil. But some people have a genetic predisposition where they can't consume too many of those. And they actually need a different kind of fat. It's called a polyunsaturated fat. They need a balance of the two to properly metabolize their fats and not gain excess weight. So simply making small changes, such as not always eating an almond, but eating a mix of an almond and a walnut, which is a different kind of fat. Or using not olive oil every time you cook, but use olive oil and supplement sometimes with a grapeseed oil. These things are very easy for us to accomplish and can mean a great deal of impact in somebody's health.
That's fantastic. The information you're giving me is so significant because, of course, the most frustrating thing about reading nutrition books is that they often contradict one another. I've done a lot of nutrition reading myself in dealing with eczema. and looking at different ways to reduce inflammation. And I was very frustrated to find that the information was often contradictory. Some of them would recommend pure veganism, some of them would go paleo, some of them would recommend a very my plate kind of well-rounded, holistic approach. So what you're describing is really revolutionary, especially with the different things that become trendy. Instead of the polyunsaturated fats, you've got to stick to the monounsaturated fats. And I didn't realize myself until I was reading more about your company that there are some people for which their genetic predisposition would indicate that a balance of the two is actually more beneficial. They don't have to just go in one direction, but we are truly tailoring their nutrition from the information you get. And that is really exciting news.
Yeah, we try to make sure that it is really diet agnostic. You are right. There are times when one diet or another seems to be the fad or the vogue diet. What we're trying to put forward, I think eventually what you will see is that the diet that is best for you is the diet that's best for you and your DNA. And incorporating this data in is going to help an individual really find the right path for them. And it's not always eliminating a particular area of food. Many of the older diets, for example, completely would eliminate a carbohydrate or go down to a zero fat mechanism. And from a sustainability factor, that becomes incredibly hard to do. So we have people when they stop the diet, the weight comes back on and they don't feel very good about themselves and they go and try to find something else. By knowing your genetics and by knowing this information, it will really help you tailor in how it is you should be shaping your meals on a meal-to-meal basis. It also will help because we are human. We do stray from our patterns at times, whether it's due to travel or reward or you name it. We don't eat exactly how we should. But if we do know how our genetics set up, we can quickly get back onto that plan that we were at and hopefully be able to help our system get back on the right plan and get back on the kind of the avenue of health and not feel so bad about it. There's so much trial and error that happens when we do dieting. Some people, for example, they may be on the right diet. It just may take longer for them to see the results, and they may give up on a diet which may be appropriate for their genetics prematurely. And this is really what we're trying to help them do. And when working with health professionals, fitness trainers, for example, that have our test, they can work with their clients and let them have some stick-to-itiveness to say, no, this is where you need to go. Just stay on this pattern because you just need longer than an average person in some cases. So it can be very great for the psyche as well as for the physical need that we're looking for.
Yes, exactly. I can see where people would be prone to dietary ADD because they try something and then they don't see the results and they think, well, darn it, so-and-so is getting results, why aren't I? And they have a completely different genetic makeup. And so they jump and they start diet hopping, where if they know what really works for their nutritional needs, it's going to give them that ability to stick to it and push through until they start seeing results because they're getting that validation from your testing that they're on the right path.
Yeah, you're right on it. We have had situations before where we've had a husband and wife both get tested, and they have had the exact same personal trainer. And before they took the test, one of them was getting much better results than the other one. And it almost got to an argument type situation, like, why am I not seeing the results that you are seeing? And they ended up taking the testing and found out that not only were they almost opposite in their dietary needs and metabolism, they were opposite in their exercise needs. So when they took this test to their fitness trainer, he was able to help them with their meal planning so they could eat the same thing. They just had to arrange it in different percentages. And then on the exercise side, when it was time for them to somewhat split up when they trained, he was able to provide some different direction for one versus the other. And lo and behold, very soon, both of them were seeing not only some changes, but very good changes, and they were very happy. So not only were the clients happy, the fitness professional was very happy as well, because now he looked like a guru for utilizing their DNA and happened to then he utilized the test a few more times for some other clients that were stuck in their routine, and he was able to give them a much more pointed way to change their diet and exercise and nutritional supplements. So it can be a great way to help some people and shed some light on the fact that, yes, we are very different. We come from very different places, and we can have very significantly different needs, and we need to recognize that.
Yeah, and I can see where trainers would love this because their genius factor just goes through the roof. And I think two very exciting things that you just talked about. One of them is that people can find out where their macros should be and whether they need more protein or more carbs, or the different combinations of how to eat and how much. When you say you can actually determine the percentages that they should be eating, that's mind-blowing. And to figure out what kind of exercise, if somebody's going to be doing more weight bearing or more endurance, I mean, these are huge developments to be able to have that information.
On the exercise side, as well as the nutrition side, it's very important for us to understand what is going to be best for us. We all know people that, for example, may run a few times a week and may run a few miles every time they run, yet their goal of losing their final 10 pounds, they just can't seem to get there. That's probably because genetically they need to be able to add in some strength or power training, some type of resistance training to help augment that. And if they did, they'd probably find good results. Or the individual that only goes to the gym and only trains with weights and has a genetic predisposition to gaining weight around their stomach, if they do too much weight training without doing some balance of endurance training. So we measure a number of different genetic variations when it comes to the exercise potential, whether it's fast or slow twitch muscle fiber activity, the endurance or power potential, grip strength, proneness to injury and recovery. These are all things that go into our AGS algorithm to help figure out what is that proper mix of endurance versus resistance training. And the better off we can do with sticking with that, the better we're going to be able to perform, as well as stay away from some of that injury, because everyone knows as we age, it's harder and harder to recover from some of that injury. So if we're of the higher injury risk and we're getting ready to start a new type of exercise or add something new in, we want to make sure that we're adding it in accordingly.
How on earth can genetic testing tell you what type of exercise you should be doing?
It really comes down to the research without getting too terribly geeky. We measure a number of different variations. It comes out of the research. There's, especially since 2014, there's been a lot of newer information that's been available in peer-reviewed studies. These are not just AGS internal studies. We utilize a lot of outside studies that come from many journals that you may have heard of, JAMA and others. The idea, though, is to look at all of the information that is available. And we've got a proprietary algorithm that we utilize to help understand how to best arrange an individual's time. So is it better to do a mix of the cardiovascular training? Some people could come up and their mix is 50% resistance training and 50% cardiovascular training. So something like CrossFit may be the perfect plan for them, taking their injury risk into account as well. Whereas other people, they may be on the outer edges, and they might be 80% endurance or 80% power. And so knowing how we arrange our time for them is pretty important. But there's a decent amount of research there. We took about 2 years to arrange all of our research and organization. And we have a team that will continually research and update our report to make sure that what it is that we have is incredibly accurate. And if we need to add something new in to update the report, that we do that as well. Accuracy and data privacy are our number one issues. And so bringing the individual that information, which is most pertinent to them, really can help provide some powerful insight into what they should be doing.
Yes, and having that information available to you is really phenomenal. I'm hoping mine's a 50-50 mix right now, because until I can get that testing, I'm splitting my cardio and my weight bearing 50-50 because I don't know. And so I'll do my cardio base every time and then get into a half an hour of weights. And I'm basically shooting in the dark.
You're working on a little trial and error. It's very smart, though, that you're incorporating both. Most people will be somewhere between 30-70 ratio and completely opposite. So by incorporating it, doing both forms of exercise is actually very, very smart until you find out. Then we can continue to tailor down once we know a little bit more. The other thing that it allows you to do when you do know your percentage is it allows you to try to find some different forms of exercise that maybe you haven't thought of in the past, to be able to incorporate those in. Obviously, adding in new types of exercise is great for the mind and keeping things fresh, as well as keeping it good for your body.
Yes, and I know I've been exercising as a regular part of my life for a long time, and what you're talking about, just attention fatigue to a certain kind of exercise. And of course, your body gets used to a certain kind of exercise. So not only are your muscles are getting too complacent, but you're getting bored. And so I myself like to mix that up. And I have a heavy bag in the basement, and I've got different weight-bearing exercises and a total gym and a Bowflex and an elliptical and free weights and different kinds of things available to me. But it will be fantastic to actually know which ones and how much of them to utilize.
I think it's brilliant. And there's so many non-traditional styles of exercise as well. I mean, we're getting into that time of the year where people have to get out the snow shovel. I had a consultation the other day, and somebody asked me, what percentage of power to endurance is shoveling my walk? And I said, that's a great question. It's got to be a good combination of both. So, because it's definitely a form of exercise for those who have ever had to do that. And so finding those new ways to incorporate fitness is very, very smart. And you're right, having that mental involvement in helping you choose what are these new types can really help infuse some new emotion, some new positive energy into that process.
Absolutely. And I can tell you as well that the heavy bag joined my workout options as a result of stress management. And it works. It's wonderful.
That's fantastic.
Now, explain to me, for our listeners, what the SNP count is, which would be, for our listeners, it's spelled capital SNP. What is that about in your testing?
Sure. So SNP stands for something called a single nucleotide polymorphism. So that's why they say SNP. In essence, an SNP, or how we pronounce it, is SNP. A SNP is essentially a unique genetic variation. So that unique genetic variation could be how a person metabolizes a certain type of fat, or how they respond to a certain type of exercise, or do they have skin sensitivity to UV that may be different than someone else. So depending on the test that you're looking at, you're going to look at different SNPs or different genetic variations to get the answers that you're looking for. So in our premium health and wellness test, for example, we look at over 60 SNPs, whereas in our NutriFit test, our more scaled down or basic test, we look at about half of those. So all the SNPs or genetic variations that you look at should be highly substantiated, should have a lot of research behind them to make sure that these genes that you're reporting on, regardless of whether it's an AGS test or beyond, is one that's adequate, that's been adequately looked at and supported. I think early on there were some genetic tests which had genes being reported where there was conflicting information, where one genetic variation might have said one thing in one journal but said one thing in another. So it's important that you work with a reputable company that not only is choosing the right SNPs or genetic variations, but has the right research backing from that as well. So hope that helps.
Yes. So it sounds like, am I correct, that there are other companies out there that offer this kind of testing, but it sounds to me as if your algorithms are proprietary, for one thing. Do you offer different testing than other companies, or is it mostly the way in which you go about the testing through the algorithm and also your refusal to share genetic data?
Yeah, that's really the biggest difference. There may be other companies which may use the same SNPs or may use similar SNPs that we use, not in the same completeness or same fashion, but there may be some that utilize it just because it's a SNP isn't proprietary. You can utilize that information, but it's really how it's arranged, how it's delivered to the individual in a usable form, which is really the big difference. And then, of course, the data privacy that we talked about. Many of these genetic tests were designed or are still designed to be utilized with a provider that can be very tough to read. And so a big thing that sets us apart is you can utilize these tests on your own. You don't need a professional to help you decipher what the information is or what the recommendations are. So taking something that could be somewhat complicated in genetics, which most people think is somewhat complicated or overly complicated, and making it not complicated has been tough. And making it into the usable form where it is now is something we're very, very proud of, because people don't really need to know all of the huge science behind it. We can explain it to them if they want. That's part of our test. But many people just want you to report, what does this mean for me? And so having the ability in our test to do both is very important.
And am I right that this involves the option of having some phone counseling about the results?
That's right. So many of our tests, we offer counseling, or there's continuing counseling that is available if someone wants a more in-depth look into this. We have some continuing educational options. Many people that get a test and get a consultation that is done, really it's just kind of the tip of the iceberg for them. And so working with our team of counselors, which can be scientists, can be physicians, can be nutritionists, can be exercise professionals, can really help an individual formulate a plan for them.
That sounds like a very useful service that you offer. I would think that a lot of people would take advantage of that.
They do. It's a lot of fun when you start finding out information about yourself, and then the real question becomes the application, working through what your goals are. How do I utilize this? What are the logistics that are associated with me utilizing this data? And that's really where a team of professionals can come in as well. So we try to make some data available on our website for individuals to see, but there are some others that are just voracious learners and just want to know as much as they can. And so we have the ability to help them.
Yes, I saw that your website is very intuitive. I thought for finding out the information that you're seeking, I was able to tool around and really dig as deeply as I wanted to in what each test could offer. And I like that. That's something I commend you for as a web developer. Not all websites are that intuitive.
Thank you very much.
Let's talk for a minute about your drug sensitivity PGX genetic test. Can you give us an overview of what this does?
Sure. So this test is designed to help people understand how they metabolize medications. As you can imagine, one size does not fit all when it comes to metabolizing medications. Some people metabolize or process the medication exactly how the manufacturer intends to. But other people, depending on their genetic makeup, they may not be able to process or metabolize that medication, and that may lead to adverse side effects. Other people you also may have the other end of the spectrum where you may metabolize the medication too fast, and that can also have its shortcomings as well. So our test is designed to help the healthcare provider find the right medication for the individuals using their genetic data. So this way, it is designed like a stoplight. You want to be able to find the medication that is green, or, green means go, so proceed as normal. It's going to work as intended for the individual. But there's also going to be a yellow indicator where it is the medication works too fast in the body. So you typically need to use a dose that's slightly larger than the normally intended dose if you wanted to get the efficacy of that medication. Or the opposite would be red, where it would be you would have to use less of the medication because it doesn't get utilized in the system and it tends to stay in the system longer. And therefore, you don't want to have a buildup of that medication. So choosing the right medication before you even take it, reduce the trial and error, reduce the ability to have adverse side effects. Unfortunately, in our country, we utilize a lot of medication. And medication was actually the fourth leading killer in 2016 behind cancer, heart attack, and stroke in the U.S. More people died from one particular type of medication, an opiate for pain management, than car crashes and plane crashes combined. So you can imagine from a human toll, getting the right medication on board is very important. But from a financial perspective, getting on the right path is very important to not overtaxing our healthcare system. So utilizing a test like this up front, and this is also another test where these genes don't change. This test is valid for you, for an individual for the rest of their life. So as we age, we tend to be needing to put on more and more medications to maintain our health. This test can be utilized to make sure we're put on the right medication before we're even assigned the medication, and hopefully have much better chances for the medication working and not causing any side effects.
This is fascinating. So there must be a predetermined set of drug classifications that you test for then, in the sense that if people don't need to take the test more than once and say, well, now I'm on NSAIDs or whatever medication they're on, you must have a predetermined list that covers all the different classifications and utilizations that people may encounter throughout their lives that you can test for?
That's correct. So we've got over 36 different classifications and subclassifications that we look at. Our test is the most robust that's actually on the market. We test well over 450 medications that we can measure, everything from oncology medications, pain management medications, to mental health and cardiovascular medications. We can even do some recreational medications as well, or over-the-counter medications, because we do know that people do self-medicate. They go to the pharmacy and get things like Advil and Motrin, or depending on the state, they can even get things like THC or CBD. So it's important for folks that understand that when they're self-medicating, is it a good idea genetically for me to be able to do this or not? Or am I putting myself at harm's risk? Or if you're working with a provider and you're thinking about some of these alternate therapies, it's good to know, is this one going to put me at any greater risk, or do I need a more traditional type of therapy, from a physician? So yes, there's many different drug classifications. When new drugs come in, part of our process is to evaluate and make sure that the new medications are added, to make sure that the report can be updated. The report is updated quarterly to make sure that we keep up with the demand of newer medications, as well as new research. Sometimes new research comes available on certain medications that may have not been able to make the list before, but with newer information, we now have enough information to add it to our report. So it is an incredibly useful tool for individuals and their healthcare providers to be able to utilize to keep them safe and keep them on the right medications.
The implications of this are really interesting. Now, a couple of questions have come to mind, and one of them is, given that we were talking about how your genes don't change and you don't need to take this test more than once, do you have anything in place for someone who took the test 3 years ago and now there's a new medication on an example, Dupixent, okay? So we've got a new biologic on the market, and it's fairly new as far as testing, but it's been in testing for 5 years or so, and it's been on the market for a year. What about somebody who's done their testing 2 years ago and now there's this new medication and they want information? Can they come back to you with some kind of serial number and get an update as opposed to having to retake the test?
They sure can. We keep their information available just for things like this, to be able to update their test. We do not keep the physical DNA any longer than we have to, but we can keep their information stored in a secured area so that when we do need to make an update for an individual, we can do that for them.
Now, there's the second thing I was thinking of for you is the implications with regard to recreational drug recommendations.
That's correct.
Of course. This must, I would think, at some level apply to people who have a family history of something, say, for example, alcoholism. And maybe they've heard, oh, you can never drink, you have to stay away from that. And then they think, well, maybe I can drink, I don't know, but I'm told that there's a biological component here. Is it true for me? Is it not? Would you find that people who are in that instance would come to you to find out whether or not they should avoid alcohol altogether, or is there some safe limit? I know this has been a debate for quite some time.
There are some markers that can show if they are at an elevated risk. Most likely, if there is a family history, they are going to be at some sort of elevated risk. the genetic test is never intended to be utilized to solely treat or diagnose an individual. It's always going to be used in conjunction with other information such as patient history, family history, other medications that they've taken. But it can be part of finding out if it's the right solution for that individual or not, for sure. I'm sure everybody is different, right? Because that's how genetics work, regardless of the genes you inherit from your mother and your father. But the arrangement and how it comes to you may vary. So it's tough to pinpoint it on any one individual that says, yes, you absolutely have this gene or you're not. Plus, there's other factors that are going to be happening within that individual, like we talked about, the behavioral as well as environmental factors that they're going to be dealing with. Not being a provider, it's hard to give advice in this particular area. What we have seen in the past is they will use the genetic information with the surrounding information, especially what they know about the patient. Do they have addictive tendencies? Do they have other genes which shed light into maybe not just the alcoholism, but what do they do? Do they have an emotional gene where they have problems with handling certain things emotionally, and are they drawn to certain things? Do they binge eat or do they binge drink, or do they do something of that fashion? So we can look at some genetics from a number of different areas, a number of different multifocal areas, and help determine, is this even smart for you to even try to open this Pandora's box, or is it not? So, but the provider and the individual are going to be the ones that are going to have to work their way through that eventually.
Now, you've touched on something that I did mean to ask you, and I forgot about. Your testing can actually provide information on whether or not somebody has a disposition in which they might turn to any substance, really, I would think, as a crutch. Anything excessive, for example, alcohol or food, or perhaps even too much exercise, something where they would go in overabundance to something for comfort.
That's correct. There's a section in our premium health and wellness test which looks at a few different behaviors, especially regarding addictive behaviors. And does someone have a gene where it's not just associated with food, it could be something. So there are people out there that are excessive exercisers, or they eat certain things. So it's important to be able to know, what is my genetic predisposition? Am I being disposed to doing something, and what is my recourse? So a lot of times it's knowing, do you have that? So what systems can I put in place to make sure that if I get put into a stressful situation, emotional situation, that I'm prepared, my family, my caregivers are prepared to make sure to mitigate the situation if at all possible. So once again, that genetic information can be very, very powerful in helping us understand how to best move through certain scenarios.
That's truly remarkable. I think that's going to be revolutionary. I really do.
I think the more people know about themselves and their predispositions, the better off, either consciously or subconsciously, they're going to behave. If they want to do something, they want to eat not according to their macronutrient wheel, they're going to not do that. But the more often that they put it into practice and being able to do the right thing, the better off they're going to do. So when they're able to make those choices, when they sit down at a restaurant or they walk into the gym and they've got 45 minutes, they're hopefully going to be more apt to doing that, to doing what's right for them, is really what we're trying to help people instruct and move towards.
Yeah, and again, I really believe that there is so much power in people knowing for sure when they're going toward a certain exercise or a certain food choice for their health and wellness, that they're on the right path, to give them that intrinsic motivation to keep going and to stick with it.
I agree.
Now, with regard to your corporate wellness B2B collaboration, how is the aggregated de-identified data that you gather utilized?
So we use the aggregated de-identified data to really help the organization figure out why people are taking this test. They're spending their time and their resources to offer this new benefit to their employees. So we give them this rolled up aggregated data to help them better organize the other benefits or wellness programs that they've arranged. If 75% of the individuals, for example, are in this to lose weight or maintain their healthy weight, then they can look at other products or services which may also help them in this design. It really helps them understand their client almost as a customer and be able to help them address their needs. So we can not only be a benefit, but we can also be a tool which helps them define or redefine some current programs that they may have, or if they need to make other additions, they can absolutely do that too.
Now, can you give me just a little more detailed example of some of the aggregated data that, say, a company gets, a preponderance of a certain kind of aggregated data?
Sure. So we can let them know, what percentage is going to be male versus female participants. We can aggregate based on age. You have more younger, more older individuals that are participating in this. We can look at what their goals were initially for why they wanted to participate in this. It could be anything from lose weight, gain performance, understand meal planning, nutritional. We try to make sure we collect all the reasons why someone is participating in this and really what the expectation is of this test. And then as we move through the testing paradigm, we're able to then get more survey back at 30 days, at 90 days. Are they sticking to this program? Have they seen some of the results? Are the results driving them to want to stay on the program or not? And then this way, the employer can actually see, wow, we had most of the participants were females between the ages of 40 and 55, let's say, and their goal was to lose weight. And yes, over a 90-day period, they saw initial results, and they've stuck to those results, and they're going to continue on with this for the next 90 days, right? Or however long it is that we want to measure that. So the idea is to help, how can we impact more individuals in their organization? Because the whole idea is, how do we engage with individuals that we haven't engaged with yet? And how do we increase the compliance of those folks that we have engaged already? So we can take some different approaches on how we perform with that employer, whether it's changing a message on an on-site health fair day, or putting in a new message in a webinar or in an email to employees to highlight something that has been working for a number of their employees that they think other people might be able to grasp. So that way the de-identified aggregated data can be put to good use.
That's really interesting. And that's going to be very much in demand, I would think, if it's not already, by companies, as we talked about, who are beginning to really tailor their benefits packages for new employees and to re-energize the employees they have, where the employees are going to feel that their benefits aren't something arbitrary that they'll never use.
That's right. The idea behind this is to try to engage as many employees as possible. But we've seen the trend of, especially in wellness programs or certain benefit programs, especially when it comes to lifestyle changing or exercise changing programs, is the people that are participating are the ones that are already in pretty good shape. We are looking for newer programs to help the employer gain engagement with individuals who haven't traditionally engaged in wellness programs. And they may be the ones that actually have some of the metabolic disorders that we are trying to help them correct. So not only do we want to physically and emotionally improve the individuals through compliance, there is a secondary win to the employer, because if we can help get some of those employees healthier and happier, then you're going to see some downside effect, a positive downside effect potentially on some of your medical and major medical benefits as well. So the whole idea behind this is, if we can prove that we can engage with more people and we can reduce some of that healthcare spend at the same time while making the employee happier and more productive, we can't think of a benefit that would be better than that. So we are very happy to be hopefully on the tip of the spear in front of that revolution.
Yes, this has the potential, with the investment from the company and the buy-in, to go in this direction over time to really reduce the overall medical costs, which is going to be much more beneficial than saying, oh, well, that's expensive, or we don't want to do it, because the long-term ramifications of all the employees getting healthier and just simply less sick is really going to be worth it.
I agree. And that's why you have certain companies that will recognize this right away, especially some very innovative ones, and say, we will completely subsidize this test if an employee wants to take that, because they do see not only the short term, but the long term ramifications of an employee having this information and being able to put it to good use. Now, we work with organizations that completely subsidize the test, partially subsidize the test, or don't subsidize it at all, and just want to make sure that the benefit is available to the employee, just raise awareness that it is available. So we work across the spectrum in numerous different ways. So it is personalizing the test. So we have to, in many cases, personalize the service for the employer and employee too.
Yes, and I would think the more educated that the employees become on the availability of this test and what it can really potentially do for them, the ones that aren't making the progress or haven't continued to try to be healthy or active, that this would really give them hope.
That's exactly right. Part of the re-education process or continuing education process is not only to provide more value to the individual that has had the test, but hopefully to engage the individuals that are seeing people getting results and wanting to have those results for themselves, seeing how easy it is to actually have the test done, how informative the information can be when it comes back, and how even just putting a few different areas into play can mean a nice gain on their overall health is really a big reason of why we do and offer continuing education, whether it be on site or through video or webinar or email or numerous different ways that an employer may want us to offer it with them. But it's a great partnership that we've been able to see. And, every group's a little different. And so we want to make sure that we can tailor our services to be able to help with that.
Absolutely. Now, Lance, I know we're coming up on time here. What's next for you?
So we are this year working on a gut microbiome test that is coming out for us. We just launched our skin health test, so we're very proud of that. So making sure that that test is properly launched is probably first and foremost. But getting into the microbiome test as well as the cardiovascular prevention test are probably the next big ones. But really just making sure that with the testing that we have available for our corporate partners and really growing this segment of the business out is really important to us. We've got some great clients that we work with, and we want to make sure that we're not just a genetic testing company. We are really a genetics services company, which can really help educate other individuals and make this really move into the corporate mainstream. So that's really our priority, not only getting a few more tests out, which are valuable, but making sure that we are doing the best with the tests and the partners that we have now.
Yes. And I will make sure that I put the information on how our listeners can find the company website and contact information in your show notes. And I would really love to speak with you again in the near future.
Great.
As you've developed this skin testing and the microbiome testing, I would love to hear more information about that, because those are really important frontiers right now. To think that there are things that you can find out about the health of your skin that you have control over has pretty significant ramifications, I would think, with regard to prevention of things like melanoma, but also with regard to aging well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not, our environment is not getting any less harsh. Our behaviors, we will continue to do, what we are going to continue to do. So skin health being our largest organ, taking care of that, really not only as our first line of defense, but also to make sure that it is useful and elastic and, looks like we want it to look. We have the ability to be able to treat it how it should be treated. And it's no different than our diet or our exercise. We have the ability to look and say, wow, these are what your genes are. And because of this, these are some of the things that you need to be doing to keep it as youthful and as malleable and protective as it possibly can be. And on the gut biome test, very similar as well. We all have a very unique gut setup, and not all probiotics are created equal. We don't all need the same or the same amount, and having the right natural gut flora is incredibly important to our overall health. So all these tests really start to string together in how it is we should be treating ourselves, and hopefully we will continue to put these pieces together and help improve people's health by giving them a lot more knowledge than they had before they took the test from us.
Yes, and I would be curious, as you alluded to the overlap there with the health and wellness test with regard to diet, how much of that overlaps into the biome as far as nutrition? I mean, there's probably other information there that you're testing with the gut biome test too, though, as well.
That's correct. But even with the skin, I mean, a large component of the skin test is actually making sure that you understand your nutritional deficiencies and have the right nutrition on board, or the right vitamins on board. If you have some deficiencies, it's actually one of the major areas of the test. So yeah, a lot of it does feed into each other. Health is health, and so it's really neat to see kind of where one stops and one starts and where the intersection actually is.
Yeah, it's so complicated. I would think that it's difficult to determine where you need to cut off one test to make it really comprehensive and not also confusing and overload somebody and then segregate the information for another test and say, well, this really goes over here.
You're exactly right. I mean, there can be so much information available in some tests. It can be somewhat overwhelming to some people. So, having the ability to have less is more in some cases, and definitely the ability to describe what is happening and what can you do. So it's kind of a so what, now what type scenario. Okay, this is what you now know. Okay, how can you best utilize this to get the best you, regardless of which test you're actually looking at? So that's exactly right. And that's the mission every day, is to make sure that when people get this information, either that they can learn this information, and then B, learn how to interpret it and do something with it.
Yes, that's really what people need, is that guidance that your company offers. In addition to providing the information, you know how to convey it in such a way that it's going to be understood and also be able to be utilized by the person who's receiving the information. Thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure.
The insights that can be gained from the genetic testing that you offer are really profound and exciting, and please keep in touch with us to keep us up to date at NWI on the developments in this incredible emerging frontier.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
This wraps up our interview with Lance Bennett, co-founder of Advanced Genomic Solutions. Join us next time as we speak with Dr. Robert Browning, HeartMath Senior Trainer and Director of Health Partnerships. I'll see you on the next episode. Be well.